My name is Matt Cornell. I'm a contemporary dancer and a digital composer, and I want to move you. My passion is in movement. I believe in its ability to inform our state of being, for its potency at the crux of experience and in turn learning. And I despair that in the course of growing up we are led to constrain our tactile engagement, which is ultimately inhibiting our full cognitive capacity. Today, I just want to scratch the surface on a few experiences I've had that have led me to be able to do this. And no, well, there's one more. And this. I'll do it again. Other angle. Thanks. It's my comfort zone. I make and collaborate in performing art to move people because I believe that once considered, nothing remains the same. And that this is just as true for movement as it is for mentality. Now I want you just for a second to take your mind and focus off me and move it to that point on your back, just between your shoulder blades. Now you don't need to change anything, just notice what you notice. Cool. This split-second mindfulness is just a quick example on directing one's attention to disarm the tensions that we hold that do not serve us. Often we disregard it altogether until we're in some form of pain, but the practice of any form of body awareness has the side benefit that getting into your body can get you out of your head without having to be off your face. But the ultimate joy for me is when the mind and the body are working together as an integrated whole. For this next one, I'm going to need everybody to stand up. If you're on the aisles, you can move into the aisles. If you're stuck in the middle, just make sure you've got about 2 chairs worth of space. If you're close to someone, just make sure you're either back to back or front to front. It's not essential, but it might make it more comfortable. Okay, so we're going to start. You don't have to watch, you can just listen, and you can't possibly do this wrong. It's experiential. We're going to tilt our head off our spine and then start a roll down. And imagine each vertebra lifting out of the next one to continue the spinal roll. And your head's heavy, about as heavy as a bowling ball, and your arms are heavy, and you can keep your knees bent. And you just want to go as far as is comfortable and then a little further. And maybe shake your head, no, to feel it relax, and then nod your head and think, yeah, this is great. And now, letting the pelvis drop just a couple of centimeters, start rolling up through the back of the spine. And just imagine each vertebra coming back into alignment on top of the last one. Head heavy, arms heavy until you get to the top. That was our training run. Let's do one more time. All right, feel free to change directions if you want. If you need more space, take it. Now this time, be strict with yourself in not doing this, but allowing this. Gravity is going to do it for us. Let your head tilt off your spine, and it'll start pulling each vertebra off the last. Your arms are really heavy, and your knees are bent, and your head's really heavy. And if you can, feel like your chest is laying on your quads, like insides of a book closing, and maybe rock from side to side, give a little jiggle if you want for fun. One deep breath, breathe in, breathe out, and now dropping the pelvis to initiate a roll up. Just a couple of centimeters, and imagine each little bone in the spine coming back into alignment till you reach the top. Excellent. Okay, the last little bit of this is to put your hands on your ears, fold them in half forwards, And find the tip, the pointy bit, and trace your fingers up to meet on top of your head. Now that's where we imagine a marionette string. Push down into that point and then release up, and imagine your entire skeletal structure just hanging from that. Yeah? This is daily practice in my profession, but still I'm surprised at how changing my self-image from a stacked structure to a hanging structure can drastically alter my movement or even my stillness. No, I'm just joking. That's it. If you want, you can sit back down, but you don't have to. No human experience happens without movement. And it is movement that informs us of our experience. Now, I read a study called It Hurts When I Do This, which was published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology. And it found that people who were assigned a dominant stance were able to comfortably handle more pain than those who were assigned a neutral or submissive stance. So I want you to try this for me. You can stay seated. Just smile as big as you can. Okay, now bigger. And then smile with your eyes as well. And now smile with the rest of your body. And just notice how that simple movement is informing your experience of this moment. Movement is a form of learning and of joy. It is our essential state of being. And as children, we know this. And our physical possibilities are as adaptable as our minds. Now, as we grow, we acquire postures, static positions to be in for certain circumstances. Now, I've trained in ballroom dancing and with the Army cadets, and had parents that told me to stand tall, shoulders back, but none of this really stuck, because as soon as I wasn't in that static position, how could I maintain my posture? What I've learned since in my movement training is alignment. Now, these are dynamic and adaptable movement pathways which are often driven through imagery or kinetic ideas rather than aspiration for an external visual conformity. It made me realize that if ideas, like hanging from a piece of string, can generate movement, then movement can generate and process ideas. Concepts, theories, wonderments, all catalyzed by or understood through movement. When my little brother was in primary school, his name's Christian, he was forced to write with his right hand, even though he'd always drawn with and favoured his left hand. And not long after this, he was diagnosed with learning difficulties and labelled an unruly kid. And I can't help but wonder if these things are related. At the time, he undertook a program which aimed to create stronger neural pathways in the cerebellum and the rest of the brain through mindful movement tasks. And for me, observing the benefits, it became very clear that any stagnancy or neglect of the body leads to a deactivation of some, at least, of the vast resources that we have available for cognition. Moving helps you think. And perhaps thinking and moving are the same thing, from visual stimuli sparking nerve responses in the brain to an oral creation, a song vibrating the eardrum, to a club beat resonating deep in the chest, to any form of physical activity from throwing a frisbee to sitting on the floor. People think with their bodies all the time. Cognition need not be mind-dominated. It is, by definition, the process of understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. And so I'd encourage all of you to be curious and to play with yourself. To notice when you find yourself twirling a pen or biting your lip or pacing or writing or talking it out, and how those forms of movement are affecting your cognition. If they don't serve you, let them go. Investigate and build on your habits. Play with your accidents to cultivate and further your cognitive abilities. Let me segue just for a moment to movement-aware consoles like the Wii and the Kinect. They are fun. They're really fun. And they ask you to move, but what they neglect is the tactile experience. In a book called Technology, Art, Fairground, and Theatre, Jonathan Crary proposes that subjectivity, the act of being the subject rather than an object, is diversified amongst the different senses and distributed to different body parts of accountability. In my own words, interactivity with only half of the body's senses is only half of an experience. There's no fear, there's no adventure. Now, it's great for all the public liability paranoia that's fettering this country's visionaries, and I do agree that risks must be managed and they must be minimised. But to eliminate risk, we must eliminate experience. And when experience is our most effective form of learning, I think that's a step too far. Another study I read by Ellen Sanseter, who's a professor of psychology at Queen Maud University in Norway, focused on the trend over the last decade to make playgrounds safer by removing the tall slides and the monkey bars. And she found that older children are discouraged from playgrounds because they've been designed with the safety of the very young in mind. And therefore, these older children will play in a more dangerous place or not at all. Or not at all. She also found that our fear as adults of children being harmed by mostly harmless injuries may result in more fearful children and higher levels of psychopathology. I remember accidentally falling to the floor in a dance class. It happens a lot. And being applauded because I had just reached my limit and experienced the necessary sensory feedback to push past it. To quote from the movie Finding Nemo, Marlin, Nemo's dad, says, "I promised I'd never let anything happen to him." To which Dory responds, "Well, that's a weird thing to promise." And he's like, "What?" And she's like, "Well, if you never let anything happen to him, then nothing will ever happen to him." Little hurts, little accidents, they serve only to make us more aware and more intelligent with the way we move through the world, the way we think and conceptualize the world, and in understanding our limits. Okay, world's shortest game of charades. Tell me what emotion this is. Louder? Yeah, I'd go with sad, ashamed, depressed. Tell me the difference between that physical state and this one. It's amazing, isn't it? Just as smiling can encourage enjoyment, adopting any depressed position, even accidentally, can take us into that emotional state. But once we are aware of it, then we can make a choice. Swiss psychologist and epistemologist Jean Piaget suggested that intelligence is what we use when we don't already know what to do. This is choice. A young mind is constantly making choices because it encounters new experience. But a young mind is not defined by years since birth. It's defined by an ability to engage in a moment as though it were unfamiliar, to be curious, to play in the shades of grey between our culture's arbitrary yet very well-established norms and precedents. To bring it back to my point, our movement inspires our thinking, inspires our movement, inspires our thinking, which inspires our movement, that inspires our thinking, that inspires our movement, which inspires and informs our state of being. And the greatest importance to me for advocating uninhibited, connected movement is the liberation that it brings to our state of being. If we can stay connected to the nimbleness of mind and body that we had as children at play, then we can't help but be more aware, empathetic, and engaged peoples. Our image of our own body and its movement directly affects us. We won't do this, but if we were in a studio, I'd get everyone to get up again and we'd try the 6 limbs technique, where you imagine that your arms are limbs and your legs are limbs, but also your head is a limb and your tailbone is a limb. Now, it's just an idea, but it's just an idea that informs movement. Suddenly, I could dance with my head or be thrown up in the air from my tailbone. And this was incredible. And just the tip of the iceberg. Last but not least, the biggest aha. The one that I'll probably be working on for the rest of my life. Finally, I realized the difference between discomfort and pain. And that the old notions of getting comfortable to think could only take me so far. That feeling awkwardness and discomfort was a venture into the unfamiliar, meaning that I was having new experiences and thus receiving new sensory feedback about it. In the first world, we've created a false dichotomy of comfort or pain. But finding the bliss in discomfort does enrich and empower. We all do it most mornings. Most of you, I'm sure, would have woken up this morning and yawned and stretched into some really strange position and felt a little more awake. But then most of us just grab some form of chemical stimulant and we get on with the day. So why don't we scale this? Stretching more to wake up more? Well, because it hurts. And I sometimes fall back into this thinking until I'm reminded that the true nature of being embodied in our physical structure is that it delivers to us sensation that we may choose how to respond to it. Discomfort is not pain. Discomfort is not pain. And we all need to discover this fuzzy line of difference for ourselves, but the possibility that it brings, incredible. I want you to think back to a time when you laughed so hard that it hurt, or smiled so much that your cheeks burnt. Yeah? This is eustress. It's a positive form of stress that encourages growth. Those were your abdominal muscles getting stronger, so the next time you could laugh harder and for longer. Pain is not only distress, but it's our body informing us of injury. And ultimately, it's all just information. It's great information. And learning to listen to and respond to that information rather than react has had the most profound impact on my life and led me to realize that it is my times of stagnancy, not activity, that cause pain. Let me finish with this one quote from Dean Chuan from his many books on bodywork. There are hundreds of conditions that do not threaten our lives, only our comfort and productivity. There are functional disorders that are unquestionably created by habits and attitudes, not faulty parts or chemical deficiencies. When it comes to our body's potential, we must use it or lose it. And the confidence to do this doesn't come first. This is a fake it till you make it, chicken and egg journey that rewards every step of the way. The way we move directly affects our state of being. And as a mob of humans being, that's an important thing to remember. Thank you.